Chapter 247 Yan Siblings. Perhaps they had been too impatient, but to the sky west of the mountain peak, two black dots eventually appeared. Two huge two-headed demonic birds gradually flew closer. They were the two-headed ducks he had previously seen at the Great South Gathering. Saddled upon the demonic beasts were a man and a woman. When she saw that strangers had appeared, the originally lazy Dong Zuaner immediately roused her spirit and stood straight. She curiously stared at the large two-headed birds as they approached. "We are truly sorry for having you two wait so long. This one is Yan Yu. The other is Yan Ling, my younger sister. We have come to bring you to Yan Ling Castle." When the two ducks flew onto the mountain peak, the man and woman immediately jumped off. The young man firmly stood and said this with an apologetic tone. "It is no matter, we also didn't wait very long." Before Han Li could even open his mouth, Dong Zuaner daintily said this with bright eyes after having seen this heroic-looking man, Yan Yu. Her voice was extremely smooth, causing Han Li to raise his eyebrow upon hearing her. Hearing Dong Zuaner's new voice, it was as if the wicked and unruly woman he spent the past few days with had transformed into a girl from a noble house. Yan Yu naturally did not know of this. When he saw Dong Zuaner, a young woman as pretty as a flower, and heard her soft words aimed at him, his heart immediately shook, and a peculiar feeling rose. He straightened his back and brightly said, "Actually, there were Yan clan disciples waiting here for guests. However, the disciples that were waiting here had to take care of some mishap. As such, there was no one here and you two were neglected. On behalf of the Yan clan, I, Yan Yu, apologize to the two of you and hope you do not take offense." When Dong Zuaner heard this, she wore a smooth smile, and attraction flashed through her eyes. Just as she thought to say something else, Han Li's dull voice suddenly reached her ear. "With Junior Marshal Sister's appearance, aren't you afraid of the repercussions from Marshal Senior Hong Fu?" When she heard this, Dong Zuaner's expression greatly changed. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. This bizarre scene caused the Yan siblings to be a bit puzzled. Yan Ling was a young woman that was 15 or 16 years old. She seemed to be a lively and charming person. She continuously switched her gaze between Han Li and Dong Zuaner with her bright black eyes, giving people the impression that she was extremely clever. It was as Junior Marshal Sister Dong had said. "It was nothing, you were only a bit late." This one is certain that the Yan clan wouldn't deliberately treat guests coldly. However, I am a bit baffled. What sort of mishap did the disciples who were originally here to receive guests encounter? Could it be that they clashed against guests? Stopping Dong Zuaner's careless use of the spring transformation art seduction, Han Li lightly coughed 2 times and said a few polite words. He then made an inquiry of this mishap that was mentioned under the guise of a joke. When Yan Yu heard Han Li's words, his face wore a difficult expression. It was as if he were troubled about something and couldn't say it clearly. "Han Li, since it isn't convenient for the senior marshal brother you, don't bother him as you wish. We should first travel to Yan Ling Castle and take a look. There should already be quite a few people there, yes? That's right. Let us go to Yan Ling Castle. There have already been many guests who arrived. They are currently discussing cultivation insights and are making all kinds of exchanges. Let us go now so you two should be able to participate." When Dong Zuaner saw Yan Yu hesitate a bit, she said a few friendly words on his behalf and caused the Yan clan disciple to greatly relax. He repeatedly agreed, and his good feelings toward Dong Zuaner grew even greater. At the side, Yan Ling faintly became aware of Dong Zuaner's bad intentions and unhappily pouted with her small mouth. At this moment, without paying heed to Dong Zuaner, Han Li only faintly smiled and nodded his head in agreement, saying, "Then I must ask Senior Marshal Brother Yan and Young Lady Yan to lead the way. Junior Marshal Sister Dong and I are fine following from behind." Noticing that Han Li didn't further press the question, Yan Yu grew happier. Then he said apologetically, "I will first lead the way. I must ask that you diligently keep close. I hope you do not take offense." Although Yan Yu said this politely, Han Li clearly sensed that his words were largely directed to Dong Zuaner. It seemed that this Yan clan disciple had already quickly fallen to Dong Zuaner's gentle grasp. Han Li inwardly laughed coldly several times. He was disinterested in getting involved with Dong Zuaner's absurd matters and feigned ignorance. Then he took out Li Huaiwen's invitation letter, nimbly handing it over to Yan Yu. That Dong Zuaner also took out her invitation letter from female immortal Hong Fu and handed it over with her slim lily-white hands. The alluring scent of her body and the luster of her jade-white skin dazzled Yan Yu for a moment, and he actually forgot to accept the letter. His little sister was no longer able to stand idle and angrily took the invitation in place of Yan Yu. Her elder brother was then woken up by Dong Zuaner's soft chuckles, causing him to deeply blush. There are no problems with Junior Marshal Brother Han and Junior Marshal Sister Dong's invitation cards. Let us set off then. After Yan Yu handed back their invitations, he mounted the two-headed duck, feeling strange. He occasionally stole a few glances at Dong Zuaner, on the way. But at this moment, that wicked and unruly girl was actually displaying a decent and honorable appearance. This caused the Yan clan elite's imagination to run wild. The four leaped off the ground in succession and headed straight back to where Yan clan siblings had come from. After flying for tens of kilometers, the group landed at an area between two mountains. At this moment, Yan Yu searched for a command tile he had on hand and firmly held it with both hands, violently pouring spiritual power into it. Suddenly, the command tile emitted a magnificent yellow mist of light over a large area, shooting toward the empty area ahead of them. When the yellow light swept past the originally empty area, a rainbow-colored thread of light suddenly appeared. Then this rainbow streak of light flashed and scattered before their eyes, revealing an imposing ancient castle in the originally empty mountain ridge. It seemed the huge walls reached about 100 meters in height. There were even countless tall buildings that reached over the walls. Han Li and Dong Zuaner felt this was rather unfamiliar and a bit too much to take in. This is our Yan clan's most important location, Yanling Castle. We are honored to welcome Junior Marshal Brother Han and Junior Marshal Sister Dong. Yan Yu suddenly straightened his appearance before solemnly saying this. Han Li smiled. Just as he thought to say something, at his side Dong Zuaner suddenly yelped "Yi!" She gazed at the castle with an expression full of shock. Seeing the girl with such an expression, Han Li naturally followed her gaze. He only saw a martial competition staged to the side of a castle with two floating, differently dressed male disciples in a confrontation. One was wearing the brown clothes of the Yan clan, a man with a swift and fierce appearance. The other had a curled beard, gray eyes, dark skin and yellow hair. He was wearing an azure robe. He appeared quite strange. There was a giant barrier of white light enveloping the stage. The barrier seemed to be sparkling. Outside of the light barrier, there stood two crowds, one to the east and one to the west. What was most eye-catching were the types of clothing worn by the two crowds. One of the crowds were standing in formation and were absolutely silent, having the bearing of regular training. They were those from the Yan clan. The other crowd mostly consisted of eccentrics with curly beards. They were all wearing green robes and had green eyes and yellow hair. There were also a few average people in there. After Han Li clearly saw this, he wore a somewhat amazed expression. He could not help but look at the Yan siblings to his side. Perhaps they had an explanation. Without waiting for Han Li to open his mouth, Yan Yu's expression became a bit unnatural after watching this scene. To the side, Yan Ling clenched a fist and said completely furiously, "They actually started another challenge. They even act so viciously. This is truly outrageous." When Han Li heard this, his heart shook. He then asked a probing question, could it be that these people aren't the Yan clan's guests? Naturally, they aren't. These fellows came knocking on our door and injured two of our disciples, a 15-year-old junior marshal brother and a 16-year-old junior marshal brother. Furthermore, they insisted on participating in the treasure-seizing assembly. I don't know what the elders were thinking, but they actually agreed. This is truly infuriating. Yan Ling hadn't noticed Yan Yu's gaze, a clear sign for her to stop. But she continued unrestrained, releasing a girl's small temper. When Han Li saw this, he couldn't help but laugh. Yan Yu then wore an embarrassed expression, not knowing what to say. It seems this is the main reason why we were waiting on the mountain peak for so long. Could Senior Marshal Brother Yu tell Zuaner a few details? Without Han Li needing to inquire, Dong Zuaner curiously hooked onto Yan Yu as if she had bewitched him. After a moment of hesitation, Yan Yu gave a straightforward answer. These people arrived this morning at our Yanling castle. When they arrived outside the castle, they had no invitations and wanted to break through, injuring two of the junior marshal brothers who were receiving guests. When the other disciples hurried after received the request for help, intending to teach these fellows a lesson, they did not think that these people would actually take out a letter and a token that actually made the squad elders grow solemn. They even swallowed their words and courteously invited them into the castle. However, these people didn't know their place, and immediately after entering Yanling Castle, they requested the Yan clan to exchange pointers with them. After some consideration from the elders, they agreed to give them a bit of difficulty. The competition would be 10 matches, all between Foundation Establishment disciples. I fought 2 competitions ago for several matches. As for the results, Yan Yu shook his head, his expression somewhat mournful. It was clear that the Yan clan was in a disadvantageous position.